Welcome to SUAANGAN. I'm your host, Janine Blake. On today's program, we'll bring you part one of the Regional Justice Conference that was held here at the Midnight Sun Recreation Complex in Inuvik. The Beaufort Delta region is comprised of 8 communities: Inuvik, Aklavik, Tuk, Fort McPherson, Sigachig, Paulatuk, Sax Harbor, and Holman. Each of the communities sent an elder, a youth, and representatives to the Justice Conference.
Morning, welcome to our Restorative Justice Conference.
John Nash is the coordinator for the Inuvik Justice Committee. He was one of the organizers of the conference.
The theme for our conference is Restorative Justice, a Community Perspective. And hopefully, over the next 3 days, you guys can take back some information to your communities on how to start up justice committees, or if you have one that's already functioning, how to keep it going.
There were 16 presentations in total. The first was Alana Mero defining restorative justice, starting a justice committee and keeping one together.
The first thing we need to keep in mind about restorative justice is it's based in the community and it's based on traditional Aboriginal values. So if you picture the community as a circle, and we know the circle of life, of course, is one of the basic Aboriginal values, the two fit together right away. When a crime is committed, it's not just against the state, it's not just a law that's been broken. When an offender harms a victim, they've harmed both themselves and they've harmed their victim. They've harmed the community, they've harmed everybody a victim is connected to. So within this circle, we have both victims and offenders and the community. And when an offender commits a crime, they quite literally step outside that circle of the community. Often the community is angry at them. Often the offender feels some shame after. People don't feel like they can trust that person. So they are basically out of that circle because of their actions. What also happens is the victim often feels like they're outside of the circle of the community, that people don't understand what's happened to them, they don't understand their pain or why they're hurt. They may see that people are more supportive of the offender than of them. So right away we have our circle being broken. One of the basic premises of restorative justice is that we want to restore the basic balance of our community. We want people to be responsible for what they've done. And we need to do that by making offenders accountable for their actions and by giving victims a choice. Responsibility for the victim means that, for the offender means that they need to acknowledge what harm they have done. And that can be very difficult for an offender. Many offenders come from lives where they've had difficulty, where they've acted out before. Maybe they've been caught before and maybe they haven't. But this is a pattern of behavior they're acting out, often from anger and often from pain. When the offender commits the act, they know they've done something wrong. I don't think I've ever dealt with an offender yet who didn't know that they had somehow harmed somebody. They may not have realized it was an actual person they were harming when they broke into a building, but they know they've done something they shouldn't have. The difficulty then when the offender starts wrapping themselves up in the shame, it's very difficult for them to come back and say, look, I'm sorry for what I did. We need to deal with offenders and with victims with respect. That respect is very important to saying to people, what you did was not acceptable, what you did caused harm, what you did harmed somebody and harmed our community. What we also need to do is help the victim and help the victim feel like they are safe in their community. And that can be done by helping to restore the relationship between the offender and the victim. And maybe they really don't know each other, but one of the things that happens for victims is they often feel very vulnerable after they've been victimized. They're concerned that they're going to be victimized again. They're concerned that the offender sees them as somebody weak that they can hurt again. So there's a big concern the offender may come back. And very often for victims, the question is, why me? Why did you do this to me? Why did you pick me to hurt? And what's interesting is most offenders really haven't paid any attention to who they're hurting. What we do is we ask the victim to explain to the offender how this has impacted them. And for many offenders, this is the first time they've ever had to hear what their actions have caused. As we try to repair that relationship, we need to hear from both the victim and the offender as to what happened. So after the victim has said, "This is what it was like for me," we have the offender tell their side of the story. Often it's comforting for the victim to realize this was nothing about me. They just simply stole my truck, broke into my house because it was there. It wasn't that they were out to get me. It's very important before an offender comes to a justice committee that they have accepted responsibility for what they've done and they've shown remorse. Because it's that showing of remorse that lets a victim move on. When they see that the offender is saying, "Yes, I did this and I'm sorry," it actually frees the victim from the burden of feeling like a victim. It also shows that the offender is being responsible for what they did. And that responsibility is then built on by having the offender and victim reach an agreement as to how the offender is going to repair the harm they've caused. And generally that involves an apology, which is very important and has always been an important part of Aboriginal culture, the power of the apology. There may be restitution made. Perhaps they're paying back for what they broke or what they stole. Perhaps they're doing community hours as a way of contributing to the entire community. Perhaps they are making something for the offender. We've had young offenders go out and help elders in the bush camps as a way of trying to restore the harm they have done. The idea is that everybody is treated with respect and we bring everybody back into that circle of the community. What this means, though, is the community has to accept responsibility for dealing with restorative justice. If we're going to use this model as a way of keeping people out of the court system and from stigmatizing them with criminal records, the community has to take on that responsibility. And that's a very large responsibility and a large commitment, especially in a small community. So in short, restorative justice is one way to heal a community. And it's a way that the entire community is involved. It's a very powerful method of bringing resolution to problems.
When SUAANGAN returns after these messages, we'll bring you more of the Regional Justice Conference. We're back with the Beaufort Delta Regional Justice Conference that was held here in Inuvik. The second presentation was by Shirley Chemies-Jones on current trends in community justice.
Shirley is the Director of Community Justice in Yellowknife, and she was recently appointed the Assistant Deputy Minister, Solicitor General for Justice.
Our program is delivered. Again, it's done on a community-based model. The principle behind this is that the program is mainly your idea, that we don't come in and say, okay, this is what we want you to do. So it needs to be community driven. You come up with the ideas, the regional coordinators perhaps work with you, figure out where you're at, where you want to go and how they can help you to get there. Same time as being community based, our programs should also be community paced. That means they develop at your speed, not our speed. Sometimes we get a little bit excited, especially when a community is really taking off and we start to heap responsibility on them, and it's not, again, that's on our agenda, not theirs, so we need to be really careful about that. Community Justice Committees continue to be the main way that our program is delivered. There's a lot of other things happening out there, but this still is a primary vehicle. We have about 17 committees in the NWT right now, and they're all at various levels doing all kinds of activities. And what we do is we try to provide them with some training, some resources and support. I'm just going to talk about that a little bit right now, so give you an idea. We can help people to provide training right from the basic. What's the justice system all about? What's a criminal justice system all about? What's community justice about? What kind of programs do you have? And what can we do within those programs? Where can we get the funding? We have several orientation packages developed to assist the communities with things. We provide help in the area of, if they want it, on job descriptions. We just developed finished a manual. I brought a copy with me if anybody wants one. We can certainly get it out there. We provide training or assistance in the area of financial statements or some of the reports. And we ask for those, but we also will help you to understand why we need them. Some in the area of evaluation, if If you want to find out if you're actually achieving the goals that you set out to achieve, we can try to help you with that. And also a big thing is related programs. Sometimes, you know, we pay so much attention to getting committees going that we forget about some of the other stuff that's happening out there. And more communities are coming forward and saying, you know, even though we don't maybe handle cases about, you know, family violence or whatever, we really want to hear it. We want to learn about that as a committee, and so we will try to set up for somebody to go into the community to talk to them about that. So it's really it's really been going well in that area. Some of the challenges that you may face as a community, and we certainly face, is that we have a great population up here. When we go to places, people can't believe that, you know, we have all this area and so few people, but it does create a little bit of havoc trying to get around and talk to people. Like we said, we're a long way from one another, and it's difficult or very costly to bring people together, but that's one of the things we do. And also our cultural diversity, we look at this as it's a very good thing, but we don't, again, from different regions, if we have 9 or 10 official languages in the NWT, it's very, sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to communicate with people. We are, as a department, we're a bureaucracy, and we're asked to provide certain things for people and to answer that, and so of course then we have to ask you as a community for that information. And we're facing deadlines. March 31st is a deadline, but if you think about it, it's actually not not always the most convenient time to have everything done. And our programs depend a lot on volunteers. You know, there's very little compensation for the really valuable work that you're doing. We're trying to do more about that, but the fact still remains that you do a lot of this on your own time, and many times it's after you've already put in a full day of work. So that's something that's an ongoing concern with us. We've had some really good successes, though. Just the amount of people here is evident of how many people are willing to be involved in this stuff. And we have some commitment, not only coming from the communities, but from our people in other departments, our leaders, and the general public out there are beginning to, catch on that this is a really good thing and something that should support. If there is one caution that I have in a trend, it's that this thing with restorative justice. There's sort of a move going on out there to define it. And this move is, they're doing this with the best of intentions, but what they're doing is they're saying, okay, it's not this, it's not this, it's not that. And what they're trying to put it in a box. And while restorative justice should be consistent in the way that, it's always delivered with respect, kindness is the foundation, a belief that you can work together, trying to repair harm, those are the things that shouldn't change. But it shouldn't be defined in a way that this person has to do this now. If you have an elder in the room, they wait their turn to speak, all that kind of stuff. I think by trying to put it in a box and put a label on it, what's happening is they're starting to restrict some creativity and some really good things that are happening out there. So while I would encourage you to learn all you can about it, and some of that material is very good, it's really what you see it as being. That's restorative justice. And there's a debate going on if who's involved, in terms of being around the table or in the room. I think that just really takes energy away from the good things that can happen in there. And we're talking a lot about that out there. But the nice thing is, the good thing is that we're able to illustrate that we have committees. This is what's going on. They don't read exact things. They don't go in exact turns. They don't do whatever. And you know what? It's still working. So that's the message we're able to get out there. So that's about the only caution I have on some of the trends that are happening out there. Is they're really trying to get this into words and define it, and by doing that, they're really narrowing down what restorative justice is.
When SUAANGAN returns after these messages, we'll bring you more of the Regional Justice Conference. We're back with the Beaufort Delta Regional Justice Conference that was held here in Inuvik. Victims of crime traditionally have very little input in the court system. community justice brings the victim and the offender together to deal with the crime using a holistic approach. Lana Woodfine gave the third presentation at the conference. She spoke about victims and restorative justice in the Northwest Territories.
We all know that there is times where the victim and the offender need to be dealt with separately. But this is usually not the case in the diversion process. In the diversion process, the offenses are less serious sometimes, and the victim and the offender are brought together. And they're dealt with by the Justice Committee. Now, we hope that bringing the Justice Committee together with the victim services worker, it will increase the awareness of all parties involved and get them thinking about the victim. Sometimes there's more emphasis on the offender within the community than there is on the victim, and we need to balance. We need to have a balance between these two. We need to have a balance between the victim and the offender. Now, sometimes when you've been victimized by a crime, you don't want to take part in the diversion, and you feel that maybe the offender is getting off easy by going for the diversion. So as a victim services worker and as a community justice, we have to ensure that the victim feels safe coming and that they're willing to attend. Now, some cases proceed without a victim, and that's why the victim worker as well as the Justice Committee should work together, because at that point the victim worker can maybe attend the diversion for the victim, can help support the victim if they don't have support to come. Okay? We have to stress to the victim how important it is to hear how they've suffered and to hear from them. It's their opportunity to speak out, and it's their opportunity to be heard, and we have to express that to the victim when we contact them and advise them that the case has been diverted. We have to be aware of the fears that they may have and the anxieties that they're going through to face the offender in the diversion setting. We need feedback from the victim, and that can be done through the victim services worker. Get feedback, and if they're not willing to come, there's a way that you could maybe contact the victim or have a victim services worker contact them and assist them with writing out sort of like a victim impact statement, but it'll be for diversion. So that can be heard, or their points can be heard at the diversion if they're unable to attend. And as I said, not all cases will, if the victim can't come, the situation can still be diverted. And in some cases it is. The victim's opinions are not, they're brought to the diversion, but they're not always voiced by the victim. Now, a huge concern right from the beginning is that the accused has to consent to the diversion, but the victim does not. And at this point, it's up to the individual committees to decide whether or not they're willing to go ahead without the victim, or without the victim's consent. Some victims don't want the matter to be diverted. They want it to go to court, and they're adamant about it going to court. And they're going through some emotions of being victimized, and we have to be aware of what these emotions are and how we can reassure the victim that coming to the diversion is okay. The victim may feel intimidated. As I said before, they may feel the offender is getting off lightly by going to the diversion, and they might have a lack of confidence in the diversion system. And we need to take the steps to encourage them to be a part of the process. We absolutely have to make every attempt to contact this victim. Once the accused is contacted or the offender is contacted and the diversion is set, we have to ensure or make every attempt possible to contact the victim. We need to accommodate the victim. The victim has to understand the diversion role. Sit through it, show them how the diversion is going to work, when and where their opportunity will be to speak, and maybe have them write down some of their feelings before they come, so they're not shocked when they walk in and they forget what they're saying. or forget what they wanted to say, so maybe it's important to write it down. Or have the victim worker in the community, if there is a victim worker, sit down with the victim beforehand and appear with them as a support. It's very important for the victim to have support at the diversion. And it's very important for them to have support in the court setting as well, but in a diversion, it's extremely important. Now, if they absolutely won't come, that's when a victim service worker can assist by having some sort of an impact statement written and maybe read at the diversion on behalf of the victim, and explain to the victim after the diversion what has happened and maybe get their input on what they would like to see at the diversion. Even though they're not coming, they might have a preference to what they would like to see happen, and it's very important to hear from the victim to see. And they have to feel comfortable. They have to feel comfortable when it's over, and they have to feel comfortable before it begins to know exactly where they're going to stand.
Presentation 7 was given by Constable Serge Robitaille of the RCMP on the role of police in restorative justice.
This role that we have, we've done it now for probably close to 15 years. It is more important now than ever, as it is now a process that we support nationwide. See, the restorative justice began in a lot of places across the country on a smaller scale. It is now endorsed by the RCMP officially. It works. We know now because it's been done for many years.
Tom Maxwell works with Correctional Services Canada from BC, and he's here to give information on how to form Justice Committee.
My name is Tom Maxwell. I come from Squamish Nation, and I work out through the Lower Fraser Valley. When I heard I was coming up here, I contacted one of our local reserves, and Chehalis Reserve, along with Elbow Lake, which was called Quiquaquela, is what they formed, and I was asked to sit on the committee under Justice. When the reserve took responsibility or said they need a committee, is the chief and council appointed somebody from the reserve. Along with that, they appointed the elders and some youth, and we involved some of our offenders from our federal institution that sat there. And that was the committee that was formed along with the RCMP and the probation office, parole office. And so what I did is I brought from Chehalis Reserve their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas to share with you, to take home. Hopefully this will assist you in putting a committee together. It's just been formed for the last 6 months. It's been ran and is running and is expanding into local communities where it's never been before in the Lower Fraser Valley. And so if this helps you, we're very happy to share it with you from the coast. So with that, I'll just say, like we down home, all our relations.
That was our program for this week. Thank you for watching SUAANGAN. I'm your host, Janine Blake, and I'll see you next week when we'll bring you part 2 of Inuvic's Regional Justice Conference.